Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it looks like Christmas came early because even IGN, yes, Legacy Access Media IGN is officially done with Disney Star Wars' shit, boys and girls, because they have got this glorious new article that they just released out there that is absolutely roasting everything that Disney Star Wars has done since they bought the institution, since they bought the IP so many years ago. And boys and girls, if the winds are really changing that much to see this kind of thing happen, it's great to see, and it shows you the disastrous dumpster fire that Disney Star Wars currently finds itself in when you can't even get a shill access media corporation like IGN to not completely and totally destroy you. This article roasts Disney Star Wars from orbit, boys and girls, and it is absolutely hilarious. So as you can see over here from IGN.com, yes, boys and girls, IGN.com, Disney, stop announcing Star Wars movies and make one. Why we should stop paying attention to Star Wars news. Yes, boys and girls, one of the legacy media institutions out there, IGN themselves, is sick and tired of talking about Disney Star Wars and all of these BS announcements and all of these cancellations that always end up coming, all of these announced projects that never come to fruition. And I mean, we've got a laundry list of examples of the kind of stuff that they've done this. How many sequel trilogies have they talked about? How many other trilogies have they announced, whether it be Taika Waititi or whether it be some of these other guys that have all now gone on to do other things and completely and totally moved on with their lives, because Disney Star Wars is good at one thing and one thing only: announcing projects that never come to fruition, and the ones that do end up being hot piles of steaming garbage that do absolutely ridiculously bad, either at the box office on the few times that they actually have released movies, or actually in their streaming services, where we have seen a consistent decline in the viewing numbers over the past few years. And guess what? Even IGN recognizes that it is the hot garbage is the current state of Disney Star Wars, and they are not going to let it go either. So we're going to check out this article from IGN.com, getting all of the juicy details of them absolutely roasting and destroying the entire Disney Star Wars franchise. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Is it absolutely insane to actually hear about the fact that IGN, of all places, is roasting the current state Disney Star Wars finds itself in? Or do you think it's just another trend of things going all in all direction that everybody has to currently wake up to the absolute nonsense that's going on, and I simply cannot put up with it anymore? Let us know what you think about all that in the comments section down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. So from IGN.com and our dear sweet Carlos Morales. Another week, another Star Wars announcement that leads to a languished sighs all over the internet. Despite Daisy Ridley saying that they are only a few weeks ago that the Rey-focused Star Wars movie was evolving and we get an update soon, the news came soon after that the next untitled Star Wars film has been yanked from December 19th, 2026 release date and ignominiously replaced with Ice Age 6. Whether or not you're excited for a new Ice Age film, John Leguizamo's Renaissance incoming, it's certainly not a great sign that was supposed to be the crown jewel franchise in Disney's lineup when they purchased the property back in 2012 is now being shoved aside for yet another talking animal movie in 2024. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they're absolutely right. Whether you're excited for another Ice Age movie or not, this is abysmally bad. This is what's happened every single time. And the fans and even the access media shills like IGN are sick and tired of this nonsense. And yet it's not all that surprising. Regardless of anyone's thoughts on the quality of individual projects, the Disney Star Wars era has been rife with corporate mismanagement, constant second guessing, and an inability to envision a future for the property beyond pilfering from the past, i.e. a Luke Skywalker show up situation. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's also what Lucasfilm has been doing for far too long, to the point that it's time we stop giving the company any credence unless they go through a serious realignment. Let's take a look at why we all need to stop paying attention to Star Wars. This is glorious, boys and girls. The Phantom movies. The Rey movie currently is set to be directed by Charmin Oboid-Chinoy. May not have been the movie that just lost its release date, but it seems likely was. Even though the film recently lost Peaky Blinders creator Stephen Knight as its writer, it's reported to have indicated that Rey is important to the multiple in-development projects. So her movie, supposedly set after the rise of Skywalker as she establishes a new Jedi Order, was the most probable candidate to launch the next wave of Star Wars films. Knight departed the project would also be an understandable reason why the film had to be pushed back, as Lucasfilm scrambles to find someone new to pen the script. But the situation's standard operating procedures for the studios, not an aberration. Obviously, this has happened time and time again. Far more Star Wars projects have been announced and failed to materialize than have actually been produced through the Disney era. Game of Thrones showrunner David Benioff and D.B. Weiss cratered the last season of their most famous project because they were hired to develop a Star Wars trilogy, only to be let go. Rian Johnson, director of The Last Jedi, also had a trilogy announced that hasn't come together. The official story is that it's because of his commitments to Knives Out sequels over at Netflix, which sure, really? Knives Out sequels compared to a Star Wars trilogy? Yeah, me thinks that stinks, boys and girls, and it is a really, really bad excuse. John Trank and James Mangold were both at various points attached to a Boba Fett spinoff film that was later reworked into a streaming series. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, Taika Waititi's untitled film, Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi film, a Lando spinoff starring Donald Glover, Sean Levy's untitled film, and a New Republic era movie from Dave Filoni have all been announced or reported on by the Hollywood trades but are currently MIA. That is a huge laundry list of projects that have not come to fruition in any way, shape, or form. And of course, we know why Rogue Squadron didn't come to fruition, right? Because of all the Gina Carano controversy and the fact that Disney so unceremoniously fired her just for speaking her own mind about something that obviously everyone else was allowed to do at the company, but not her, because of course she didn't agree with all of the groupthink out there. To say it's unlikely that most of these films will come to fruition is an extreme understatement. Lucasfilm has repeatedly announced projects that have no real groundswell behind them, seemingly hoping that we all have the memories of Goldfish and won't recall how many times they pulled the rug out from under us. Does anyone seriously believe that the latest report of X-Men producer Simon Kinberg's upcoming trilogy will pan out differently? Has Lucasfilm really banked their future on the Dark Phoenix guy? Or will we just bide our time until we get more news that Kinberg has departed the project 6 to 12 months from now? Given the company's history, the latter is far more likely than it should be. Absolutely. The episode 9 problem. The biggest reason why we're in this state is the Rise of Skywalker detonated the franchise theatrically. Yes, boys and girls, they're gonna roast all of the Disney Star Wars movies, which I'm sure they all gave a 9 out of 10 at the time they came out. But now that the tide is turning, whole new attitude from IGN. Yes, the last entry in the Skywalker saga has managed to barely crawl over the $1 billion mark, a huge downturn from The Force Awakens, mind you. And the movie did lose money after we found out about the tax filings from the UK. That movie cost them like $650 million to produce, so it was indeed a box office loss. Boy, I wonder why too many of these movies haven't come to fruition, boys and girls. But the film was a creative disaster, spending so much of its time trying to walk back the previous film that has rendered the entire sequel trilogy as an exercise in futility. Whatever Jar Jar Abrams, Lawrence Kardashian, and everyone else at Lucasfilms imagined the new trilogy to be when they started to work on The Force Awakens, it likely wasn't a limp sprint of a boss fight with a bizarrely resurrected Palpatine completely bereft of stakes or gravitas. The trilogy had some interesting new characters, and The Last Jedi tried to add some depth to the proceedings, but The Rise of Skywalker threw all of that out for a tired retread that reeks of desperation. Yes, boys and girls, just like we all said at the time, it was literally nothing more than, oh, you brought Palpatine back, yada, 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 in a desperate attempt to drive people to the box office because you knew your films weren't doing well. You were losing money at the box office and you had no idea what to do. That was the problem from the very beginning. I mean, literally, the first movie that they had, that one literally was nothing more than a rehash of A New Hope, except instead of it being a space station, now it was a whole planet and it can blast all the way across galaxies and destroy planets and entire galaxy. I mean, it literally was A New Hope, a retread all over again. And then, yeah, The Last Jedi went in the next movie went in a completely and totally sideways different direction. And guess what? The fans weren't digging it. It didn't do very well. That guy got fired. I mean, this is literally the story of Disney Star Wars. It's nothing more than people having no idea what the hell they're doing and just collapse after collapse after failure after failure. And this is all we've been getting. And guess what? Even IGN is sick and tired of it, boys and girls. Yes, Solo, a Star Wars story, was actually a bomb the previous year, but that was much lower stakes in affairs of terms of its effect on the franchise, going on a spin-off about a single character. If the movie hadn't essentially been shot twice, ballooning its budget out of control, it could have been a respectable hit for Lucasfilm's catalog. But the finale of the Skywalker saga should have been the biggest movie of the year by default. Not only did Episode 9 not measure up to the previous entries at the box office, it suffered from the roughest reviews and the worst cinema scores of any film in the series. Within only 4 years, audience went from incredibly excited to tremendously wary of Star Wars, and Lucasfilm hadn't been able to get a new film off the ground in the time since, instead retreating to the middling comforts of the Disney Plus shows, which, as we've documented on this channel in extensive, the audience has continued to go away. They have continued to lose more and more viewers with every new entry that they put out there. Things aren't going very well over there at all. Not that the pivot to TV has been a total wash. Andor is excellent, and Visions at least tried to do something different, but simply doesn't feel like the right call for Star Wars. Disney Plus series can fill in the gaps in the release schedule, sure, but the original Star Wars was one of the movies that literally invented the modern blockbuster template. To see that franchise in such a sorry state theatrically is disheartening. And no, putting the fourth season of The Mandalorian on hold and releasing what will likely amount to a TV special for Mando and Grogu in theaters doesn't help matters. Yes, indeed. It is not going to do it. That movie is going to end up bombing at the box office because they're going to be like, what? Like, unless you watch the Disney Plus series, you're not going to have any idea what the hell's going on, and people aren't going to want to go to the series to catch up in order to go see a movie. They're just going to avoid it. If anything, it reinforces the value of the Star Wars brand has plummeted to a point that it might not be able to recover from, aka Star Wars is dead. What makes this even more depressing to think about is that all of Lucasfilm's walking back and second guessing of their creative decisions is clearly being done out of fear of their own audience. Now, to be fair, Rogue One underwent significant reshoots before the tide turned against the franchise, but that movie came out on the other side and strong entry and also introduced Tony Gilroy to the series. And honestly, like Rogue One, that's the good movie. That's the only good movie out of any of the Disney Star Wars trilogy or any of the Disney Star Wars movies. And there's even arguments to be made that the movie's not great, which I probably would agree with if I saw it a couple more times. But like literally, that's what a lot of people say. Like that's the best out of their entire stuff, and that's not really saying much. I mean, literally, your spinoff, your prequel story is the best one out of your entire trilogy, right? Like your trilogy movies weren't the good ones. No, that's not good at all. But it's ever since then, the, let's say, mixed online reception to The Last Jedi. They're talking about all of you guys out there that flipped out over this stuff. Lucasfilm has been full-blown panic. The Rise of Skywalker feels like a plea for the fans to not make any more angry YouTube videos about The Last Jedi. And the tripping point on nostalgia out of fear of anything that could be perceived as a different or subversive has turned many subsequent projects into a diet version of something you used to like years ago. From deepfake Luke Skywalker strolling onto the screen in the second season finale of The Mandalorian, despite the stand-in they used looking like a young Mark Hamill who stepped out of a time warp, to they made him look all kind of weird, to forcing Rosario Dawson and Mary Elizabeth Winstead into ridiculous-looking cosplay makeup so they can play characters who should have stayed in animation. Yes! To the borderline breaking original trilogy canon with Ewan McGregor's, McGregor's Obi-Wan. Yes, it did break canon. It absolutely did break canon. And Hayden Christensen's Darth Vader having another duel set between the Revenge of Sith and A New Hope. Lucasfilm's strategy has been to strangle Star Wars to death by refusing to ever let it move forward. That would be bad enough on its own, but the company's capitulation of the worst parts of the fandom gets even more egregious when you remember that they largely refuse to stand by the actors of color who receive the most toxic response to their projects, like John Boyega, Kelly Marie Tran, and Amanda Steinberg. There's the IGN we know and love. There's the IGN that says, oh, it's all the mean fan part. Oh, the company didn't do enough to stand behind them. Yada, yada, yada. Amanda Steinberg literally put out a diss track about all the fans. Like, they were literally calling Star Wars gay before the series even came out. So, I mean, like, literally, sorry, buddy. They did all that to themselves, buddy. They did all of that to themselves. Quite frankly, enough is enough. Star Wars is a mess, and it will stay that way as long as the current leadership and corporate attitude remain in place. That's right, fire Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, and all the rest of them. Constantly hiring, firing, and recycling creatives on their projects for none of them to get made is no way to run a movie studio. The cultural rot at the heart of this enterprise is too deep-rooted to be removed by anything less than a complete overhaul. Hear, hear. But whether that's even possible at this stage is anyone's guess. What's not in the franchise has been lost a long time, and it likely won't find its way out of the woods anytime soon. But until then, we would all be better off if we stopped giving Lucasfilm any benefit of the doubt, because the last few years of Star Wars, I'm afraid to say, that's not how the Force works. Shout out to IGN. I mean, yeah, you had your still little kind of like little nonsense and all your kind of BS in the middle of it, but it still ended up working out a whole hell of a lot better than anything else we've seen come out of this. And yeah, of course, they were like, you didn't protect Marie Tran, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And people didn't bash Marie Tran, the actress herself, unless she ended up saying something dumb, which I don't remember she does. They were just trashing the Rose Tico character as pointless, ridiculous, and just a shoehorn kind of in thing out there. And the same thing, Amanda Steinberg did that nonsense to herself. But other than that, IGN's right. Like, IGN's absolutely right. Everyone inside of Lucasfilm needs to be fired from from literally like all of the top of the studios all the way down to, I don't know, maybe we need to get rid of the janitor too. Nah, he's probably a nice guy. He probably actually loves Star Wars. But I mean, literally all of the studio heads need to be gone. Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, all of those folks need to be fired. They all need to be sent to packing the door. And then maybe, just maybe, if you fire some actual fans and people who know and respect the lore, maybe you can turn Disney Star Wars around again. But at this point, it is dead in the water, boys and girls. It is completely and totally a dead franchise. And even IGN has to completely admit that and absolutely roast them for the kind of current disastrous dumpster fire state Disney finds itself in. At the end of the day, that is Kathleen Kennedy's fault. And a little bit of Bob Iger and a little bit of George Lucas, because guess what? George Lucas said Kathleen Kennedy was his hand-picked successor. So yeah, how'd that work out for you, Georgie boy? Because holy cow, the current state of Disney Star Wars is so bad. The announcements have gotten so ridiculous. The retreads of all of this kind of nonsense have gotten so bad that even your access media loving IGN legacy institution out there has to call you out and roast it. And boys and girls, if that's not another sign of us winning, I don't know what is, because this is absolute delicious candy piter that IGN is out there roasting and absolutely destroying this current state of Disney Star Wars. And guess what? Kathleen Kennedy, Dave Filoni, Bob Iger, and everybody else is over there at Lucasfilm that's been in charge of any of this kind of nonsense. You have done this to yourself. How'd it work out trying to make Star Wars into a girl's brand, Bob Iger, Kathleen Kennedy? Yeah, that's never blown up before on anybody in the past in the history. And now you find yourself, you took one of the literal, it was a money printing machine. It was a merchandise money printing machine is what Disney Star Wars was. And you spent billions of dollars on it, and you spent tens of billions of dollars producing content for it, all to literally get it flushed down the screen. The only thing Disney Star Wars will ever be truly remembered for is the way to destroy a franchise in less than a decade. And you have no one but Kathleen Kennedy, Bob Iger, and the rest of the Disney leadership to blame for that. It's not the fans' fault that the stuff you put out is garbage. And now even IGN has to roast you. And boys and girls, that's a beautiful thing, and it's exactly what they deserve.